Hi, good morning. Thank you all for coming. Please take your seats. My name is Ying Lee, and I am a first-year student here at Tuck. I'm honored to introduce our first speaker of the day, Beth Stewart. Beth Stewart is the founder and CEO of Trewstar Corporate Board Services, a boutique firm that focuses on placing qualified women on corporate boards. Beth, a former investment banker, founded Trewstar with a deep understanding of the intricacies of how a board functions, with over 20 years of experience on corporate boards herself. As a seasoned veteran in the boardroom, Beth has served as a member of every type of board committee. She has chaired 3 audit committees, participated in the transition and replacement of 4 CEOs, and supported management in numerous corporate restructurings, including 1 bankruptcy. She's the former director of Carmex Incorporated, General Growth Properties, and Avatar Holdings. Beth graduated from Wellesley College in 1978 and started her career at Goldman Sachs as one of the first analysts in the investment banking division. After graduating from the Harvard Business School in 1982, she rejoined Goldman Sachs as an associate in the real estate investment banking division. While at Goldman Sachs, she was responsible for many significant client relationships, including Sam Zell and the Buxbaum family. She was also a member of Goldman Sachs' Whitehall Investment Committee. Since her retirement from Goldman Sachs in 1993, Beth has pursued many professional investing and consulting activities in addition to her directorships. She had also been an adjunct professor at the Columbia Graduate School of Business. Beth lives and works in the greater NYC area. She has 5 grown children and 1 husband. Let's welcome Beth.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. And before I begin, I want to thank Professor Argenti for the introduction of me to the, it seems like many women who are organizing this wonderful conference. I also want to take a minute to introduce some young people who are here that are near and dear to my heart. They're in the audience. In fact, they're all in the front row, starting with Lauren Argenti, who is Professor Argenti's daughter. I wonder how come I got to know all of you. That was the connection. She works with me at Trewstar in New York City. And then there's my son Malcolm, who is a sophomore at Dartmouth, right there. And my daughter Priscilla, who is a senior at St. Paul's School, just about an hour south of here in Concord. And then there is our good friend Penelope Williams, who is a junior at Dartmouth. So thank you to all of you in the front row for being here. So the topic of my talk is why I am not a C-suite executive and what I know about the women who are. I was surprised to find out that women in the C-suite are married with children. I have interviewed over 250 C-suite women in the last 18 months through Trewstar, my search firm, which, as you just heard, specializes in the placement of qualified women on corporate boards. Through the course of these interviews, many things have surprised, amazed, and impressed me, and 3 stand out as most relevant to this conference. First, when I started Trewstar, I expected to meet mostly unmarried or divorced women. But an unscientific review of our interview notes reveals that 70% are married with children. Second, women in the C-suite get along well with men. They are the breadwinners in their families, so they make their whole wide-ranging life actually work. And to make it work, they have to get along with their husbands and their bosses and their male peers. And third, many of these women stop working as soon as they have achieved their financial goals. I know very few senior female corporate executives over 60 years old. Now, many might ask, what about the men who are in corporate America's C-suite? Aren't many of these same characteristics true for them? That is, they're married with children and they get along with men and they retire early. And my discussion today is not about the men, because it's not that surprising for a senior male executive to be married with children or to get along with men. But I will, as we go through this, address some concerns about men, but only to question whether we are ready for what equality for women will mean for men. So my goal for the next 30 minutes is to engage and entertain you by offering a few new thoughts on this well-worn topic of women in the world of business. And hopefully we'll have 30 minutes left for you to entertain and engage me in return. And I can see one of the leaders of the conference saying, we're not going to have 30 minutes left. So we'll move this along as quickly as we can. So I want to start by loosely exploring three broad and interconnected topics: gender, money, and power. Through this discussion, I hope to show you that many successful senior women executives have figured out how to stay married, have children, and have a career. It's a testament to just how incredible they really are. What is unfortunate is that I don't think men understand what it means to layer pregnancy and motherhood on a successful career, not to mention menopause, which I won't. But if you see me start to take this scarf off, you're going to know why. Lots of women choose not to attempt the road to the C-suite, but those who do really are the cream of the crop. So my research is not formal. My report today will be informed more by anecdotes than measurement. My ideas are my own. How do those political ads go? I am Beth Stewart, and I agree with everything I'm going to say. My sources are my life, my own marriage of 32 years and counting, my observations on the lives of my 5 children and their friends, and the information I have accumulated from conversation about our gender and how men may be the key to equality of pay and recognition. I want to focus on an obvious but often blurred aspect of our gender. That is the reality that only women have the equipment to complete the act of procreating our society. Yes, the men do the hard part, but it doesn't take very long, and it doesn't require them to interrupt their careers. There is a school of thought that says what you do in your 20s in the workplace doesn't really matter. You could take a gap year between jobs and travel the world, or you could have children. Many careers start at different times, so nothing seems to be lost by deferring a real commitment to work until your late 20s. One woman I know runs a $20 billion business, the largest division in a $75 billion US manufacturing company that would be well known to you if I told you her name. She had her first child when she was a freshman in college, her second child when she was a junior, and her third child the year after she graduated. She is not yet 50 years old, but she is a grandmother, and one of her daughters is a dentist. She is also a corporate board member, thanks to Trewstar, and she is still married to the father of her children. On the flip side, you can wait until you are a senior woman in control of your schedule with subordinates to help you handle your responsibilities. I recently met a woman who had her first child at 44, her second at 48, and then sold her .com company. Women will exert unequal effort to have equal opportunities until some other method for having children is developed. Many countries in Europe have government programs that support the baby-making and child-rearing process with subsidies paid directly to the women who have multiple children. France is particularly well known for its mother-friendly approach. So I was open to the possibilities of new ideas for US companies. All may not be well there, however. As Slate magazine has observed through the title of one of its articles, it is amazing to be a working mom in France unless you want a job. An American with an 18-month-old child who decided to enter the Paris job market explains in this article. Then, this is a quote from the woman, "Then my job interviewer asked if I had children. I told her I had an 18-month-old and that we found Paris to be a much friendlier city to raise a family than in New York. What followed was a long discussion of my childcare situation. Then she asked how old I was and if I was planning to have more children. I felt myself cringing. Why was this coming up and in such detail so early in our conversation?" She continues, "I don't want being a mother to change the way employers see me. But of course it does. I'm in my 30s. It's true I'm likely to get pregnant again. It's true I will sometimes want to have dinner with my family. And it's true that any company who hires me is making a long-term investment. This causes employers to think about the future when hiring, including how a woman's eventual or actual children might affect her job performance." Now, did you notice that the interviewer in that story was a woman? And did you think she wasn't being supportive of women? I don't think so. I think it means she has a company to run and women's child care issues will not trump getting the job done. No one ever says thank you to me for the 5 children I have. I think that's sad. Wherever you work, the only real deep down interest your employer will have in your family life relates to how it might interrupt what they want you to do in the office. Large companies may, ironically, be more flexible than small ones because they receive more social pressure and have more resources to accommodate different work arrangements. Small companies that we think of as being nimble and forward-looking can be the worst. What VC-backed company wants to deal with women and the complications of their children? They want to make money, and they want employees who will devote themselves to that endeavor. Is that practical reality why so many well-educated, fully leaned-in women are not well represented at VC and PE firms, either as employees or as CEOs of their investment companies? So, what are the solutions? One radical idea is for men and women to both be forced to take maternity and paternity leave so that employers must develop new, more socially minded ways to manage their workforces. That sounds good, except that we need companies to deliver products and services, and how are they supposed to do that with a constantly shifting set of employees? It is well documented that a diverse set of perspectives enhances a company's decision-making process. But is that benefit offset by the complications and risks of shifting people in and out of jobs to facilitate a meaningful and gender-neutral maternity-paternity policy? And let me add one more complication to this. In my opinion, taking time off to be with an infant is the least of a parent's responsibilities. What about those teenage years? Should we have time off for that too? Alternatively, maybe we should develop programs where staying at home leads to some measure of financial independence instead of absolutely none at all. How about retirement accounts for stay-at-home parents? It is ironic that one possible benefit of having men in domestic roles is that they will finally have the opportunity to experience traditional female roles. This might result in more accolades and more financial success and security accruing to those positions. Gloria Steinem once said that if men had periods, it would all go from hush-hush embarrassment to a contest to see who has the biggest flow. It's true, Paul, she said that. What a perfect moment to switch the subject to money. So this is money as it relates to authenticity, and is authenticity sort of overrated? Let me describe more, because everyone's talking about you have to be your authentic selves. Let me describe more about the women in the C-suite. I have said already that they get along with men. They're also very smart and hardworking. In some ways, it's just logical. If they were not smart and hardworking and able to get along with men, these women wouldn't be in top corporate jobs. The woman wouldn't have been promoted to the C-suite. She would still be in middle management, or doing her own thing like me, or working for a not-for-profit, or maybe coaching a high school hockey team. The C-suite women I know decided, together with their husbands, that the wife's career was more promising and financially rewarding than the husband's. Why do women who make it to the top job get along so well with men? Because they have to. They are the primary breadwinners in their family. This is quite an insight. They can't be wildly outspoken crusaders for any topic. They can't be difficult or too emotional and still stay in the C-suite. For most of their careers, they needed the job and the money, so they learned how to make life work at home and at their companies. Let me pass on a few quotes from 3 different women, different ages, different careers, in different parts of the U.S. I believe they help illustrate my point. One woman told me, "In one day, our family income declined by 60%. My husband, who had been planning to start his own business, and I agreed that he should, actually handed in his resignation. Now the responsibility of supporting our family with 3 young children was on my shoulders. The success of my career became paramount. I couldn't just quit a job because I disagreed with my boss or had a bruising argument with a sexist colleague. I had to make tough situations work." Another said, "I should be head of the firm. I think strategically about the business of the firm, understand planning, budgeting, and business development, have been on the management committee for 5 years, and have a finger on the pulse of the partners, associates, and staff. But if I insisted on everything that I think should be done, they would move me off the management committee. So I make a point of encouraging other members of the firm to speak up, not just because everyone's thoughts are valuable, but also so that the members of the committee don't have the opportunity to dismiss what I'm saying as just one woman's concern." And let me offer a sort of different version on this. This woman said to me, "I was always outspoken. My father says I am the only person he knows who can tell a person to go to hell and be confident they will enjoy the trip." But I still had to learn that I had to deliver the tough messages with the mind and the heart, constructive and respectful. I wanted to be an authentic leader, not an authentic asshole. So, while money is a driving factor in keeping women in the workforce, it is also why these women don't stay, why they retire in their 50s. They have made enough money by then so that they are no longer beholden. Many report it is a hard slog to be in such a male-dominated environment for so long. It is a hard slog for men too, and many of them don't make it to the top job either. But the numbers in the S&P 500 show that there are only 25 women CEOs. Not to put too fine a point on it, that means there's 475 men who are CEOs. It isn't that the women aren't capable or that they don't care about more money and prestige, but that after a point, it seems to me that their lifestyle becomes more important. So authenticity is this tricky topic. I believe women do what they must do to succeed in male-dominated corporate environments, which are not deep down interested in the extra challenges a woman might face. Not that the women discard their values, but they figure out how to press their points in different ways so that they can be heard. But when you turn back to home life, a split occurs. On the one hand, successful working women become less concerned about how the dishes are done or how the house is clean or how the kids got their homework finished. All of them report to me that their children are so lucky to have an involved father. But there are some times when children seem to need a mother, and when the mother is needed, she drops the job and focuses on the child. I see this as such a crucial distinction in the authenticity discussion. She is flexible only about what doesn't really matter. I don't think that men with a wife at home drop everything to care for a sick child. This isn't meant to be right or wrong, men versus women, but just another example of how a woman has an extra set of challenges. Once again, lest you think this is just the words of an older generation, I was having coffee with a 33-year-old Wall Street executive a couple of weeks ago, and mindful of this conference, I knew this woman had a new baby, and she's a Dartmouth grad. So I said to her, tell me about what this is like for you. And she literally sent me an email with some thoughts, and I want to pass on one quote. She said, even if you are in the most equal of partnerships, the demands in the first year fall. By the way, she hasn't had a second or third or fourth year. She's just talking about the first year because that's what she knows about. The demands in the first year fall incredibly heavily on the woman. There are biological realities that should not be underestimated, even for those of us who are accustomed to simply pushing through obstacles. These take their toll in terms of time and energy. The other reality is that I believe mothers devote more mental space to their kids. The subconscious background thoughts are constantly about caring for the child, which shifts focus from what you may have thought about pre-child. I believe it's important to acknowledge this reality so you set expectations appropriately and can therefore take steps to assure career momentum. The woman I mentioned earlier who had children late in life told me about the problems she is having with that 16-year-old son. While her husband thinks the boy should buck up and get on with it, the mother executive watched her child with severe learning issues go from sad to depressed to suicidal. So she stepped in with all her executive talent and assembled a team of experts, including teachers and the principal of the school, to work out the best path for her son. C-suite women with children work because they are almost always the breadwinners in the family. They manage their relationships with men in a more careful way than those of us without the same pressures. But always in the back of their mind or heart are the children. I remember a Goldman Sachs partner who said to me after I had 3 children, "You don't seem as devoted to Goldman Sachs as you used to be." And I wonder if my actions would have been different if it had been me and not my husband who became the Goldman Sachs partner. Something would have been different, but not the devotion to my children. I will say one of the things that would have been different is I probably wouldn't have Malcolm and Priscilla who are sitting here. Moving to power. Why is the cream of the crop not on top? At Trewstar, we have meetings of our senior advisors and our associates. At the last meeting, there were 7 women around the table from age 25 to 72. Trying to set a good example, put my money where my mouth is, I hired a new associate who is a young man. He hasn't started working with us yet, so he wasn't at the most recent meeting. And midway through the meeting, my mind wandered as I thought about how the conversation would be different if a man had been in the room. Would we have commented on how good one of the women looked in her black pants? Would we have discussed various female medical issues? Would we, that's particularly Lauren, would Lauren have ordered different food or more food? And then I thought about Ellen Powell, the woman who sued Kleiner Perkins for sex discrimination and lost. In the course of the trial, the whole world heard about the life of a woman in Silicon Valley. And for many of us, it was a walk down memory lane. So I think the first reason men stay in power is that they can and they want to. They want to work with whom they know and like. And most of the time, that's a man. Just like in growing numbers, women want to work with women. We have heard this time and again, and we get angry and frustrated, and it's not fair and it's not right, but it is true. Nothing has changed, and maybe if women were in power, they would predominantly choose people similar to them. I certainly understand this tendency better than I used to. Here's a further explanation, and I'd like all of you to tell me if you know where this quote comes from. Lamentably, it is a historical fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges voluntarily. Individuals may see the moral light and voluntarily give up their unjust posture. But as Reinhold Niebuhr has reminded us, groups tend to be more immoral than individuals. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear with piercing familiarity. This wait almost always means never. Anybody know who said that? Who? Very good. And you don't know how many people don't know that, so congratulations to you. This was in his letter from the Birmingham jail. That's a very long letter, but gosh, is it worth reading if you all have time. It is important to understand that the problem we face today is not new. In fact, its roots date back to the beginning of the tradition of Western literature. Allow me to quote from an article in the London Review of Books by Mary Beard, Distinguished Professor of Classics at Cambridge University. Now, this is a quote from Mary. I want to start very near the beginning of the tradition of Western literature and its first recorded example of a man telling a woman to shut up. We tend now to think of the Odyssey as the story of Odysseus and the adventures and scrapes he had returning home after the Trojan War. But the Odyssey is just as much a story of Telemachus, the son of Odysseus and Penelope. The process starts in the first book with Penelope coming down from her private quarters into the great hall to find a bard performing to throngs of her suitors. He's singing about the difficulties the Greek heroes are having in reaching home. She isn't amused, and in front of everyone, she asks him to choose another, happier number. At which point, young Telemachus intervenes. Mother, he says, go back up to your quarters. Speech will be the business of men, all men, and of me most of all, for mine is the power in this household. And off she goes, back upstairs. Mary Beard continues, there is something faintly ridiculous about this wet behind the ears lad shutting up the savvy middle-aged Penelope. But it's a nice demonstration that right where written evidence for Western culture starts, women's voices are not being heard in the public sphere. More than that, as Homer has it, an integral part of growing up as a man is learning to take control of public utterance and to silence the female of the species. So, gender, money, power, these stories from women of all ages, all the way back to Penelope, show the challenges and complications for women in the business world. What am I trying to tell you? Well, I have 2 points for you to ponder. The first one is, as it relates to gender, it's about your body. You are the vessel. You are the linchpin of our society. Its implications are enormous. Nobody talks about this. It is physical, it's emotional, it's about time, it's about focus and energy. It's not about leaning in or out. It's not about having it all or not, or networking, or resumes, or mentors, or sponsors. We all know about the complications on one's career of having a baby. Here's the thing we're missing. Women who have successful family lives and a career that ends in the C-suite are very, very special and rare. Fathers who make it to the C-suite are certainly impressive too, but it is not the same journey. We need to revere the women who have finished, not a marathon of life, but a triathlon of life. We need to march them over to the 3D printer and make more of them. This is not what happens. We congratulate them only for the parts of their lives that look like the men's successes. We do not celebrate everything they have done or the extra difficulty they experienced to get it done. Point 2, and this is my point about men. Men have been the key to so much of what surrounds us. Yes, that sounds obvious, but I mean something more subtle. The buildings we're in, the airplane I flew up in, the car I drove, the computer I use, these all began as the work of men. You might say, well, If only women had had the chance, they would have developed those products and made the same advances in our standard of living. Maybe, but we don't know, do we? Yet, we are in the process of radically changing the expectations we have about men's behavior. And what will that mean for us? By insisting on equality for women, we are dramatically changing life for men. And real research should be focused on this important topic. I want to close with a wish. You are all familiar with TED Talks, I hope. I have recently learned that once a year, one of the TED Talks is selected for a prize. The prize is they get one wish. So I decided to give myself a tuck wish. And here it is. I wish that women would speak with one voice, one message. Look at the gay movement and what it has been able to achieve. Thanks to an organized, one-voice message, gay marriage has become a reality. AARP does an excellent job of representing issues of an age group that welcomes me now as a member. I ask why Senator Gillibrand, a Dartmouth graduate, is working so hard to have equal pay for women. Why is this still an issue? Why is her second area of focus assault in the military? Why is this still an issue? And for me, every day, I ask, why are there 10 different organizations working to create parity in the boardroom, and yet we are still at 18% women on corporate boards? I can assure you it has nothing to do with supply. Women's issues remind me of an African village where some women are in a cluster weaving, and others are making beads, and a third group is preparing the meals. But there is no cohesive strategy. Are we marketing the beads and the blankets together? Is the food healthy enough to assure the workers are happy and productive? I hope you understand this analogy. We need a CEO of the women's movement. We need mergers and acquisitions. We need corporate divisions that work together. We need a remarkable marketing strategy. We need intense focus on adding more women in all leadership positions across government and corporate America. We need a remarkable funding strategy. And we need quarterly results reported to our stakeholders. And this could be so easy. We have all these incredible C-suite women who have just retired from top positions in our best companies. We need one CEO, and then a CFO, and a CMO, and a CIO, and a CHRO, and a CISO, and a general counsel, and numerous executive VPs of various divisions, and a bunch of really fabulous newly minted MBAs. My wish is that when I suggest this idea to one of the women I know who would be perfect for the CEO job, she will say yes, so that when you come back for your 10th reunion with your baby or your dog or your husband or your wife or just yourself, we won't have to talk about any of this anymore. Thank you. Oh, thank you very, very much. I saw Mika Brzezinski get this present last night, and I had to whisper to somebody, I love this present. I happen to have it in a different color, and it's from St. Paul's School, and I use it all the time, and it was starting to get frayed. So thank you very, very much. Oh, wait a second. There's some.
10 minutes for Q&A.
Yes. Can we have 10 minutes for Q&A? I got some other presents, too. Yes, Q&A. I'm going to repeat any questions we have. Right in the second row.
Hi, I'm Allison. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
So you spoke before about the opportunity for larger corporations that are feeling more of a social pressure to make changes that are more accommodating for different choices. Could you go into more how you see that, like an opportunity to really strategically use social pressure in order to get the types of results?
You know, I don't agree with the idea that it should just be about social pressure. I'm going to give you an example of something that I think makes sense. In preparation for this talk, I read Anne-Marie Slaughter's article again, the one in Atlantic Monthly from 2012, which is a long and wonderful review of a lot of these topics. And one of the things that was in there was the question of, you know, part of the problem for anybody who has children who works full-time is that school schedules and work schedules are not on the same hourly. Now, why do kids go to school at 7:30 and come home at 3 o'clock? And what? Yeah, farms. And so other than Malcolm here who wants to be a farmer, which I'm very proud of, by the way, because I think it's a growth opportunity area now. Why don't we have kids start school at 9 o'clock or 9:30 and go to 5 o'clock so everybody can stop this? I got to go pick up my kid. There's one of the women I talked to said that the corporate environment was set up by men for men, and if there were women in a corporate environment and they were allowed to sort of be in charge, enough of them, a critical mass, you could start to change some things that would just make all of this easier. And I don't know, to me it's not about social pressure. Some of it's just about logic and doing what makes sense. Because I think forcing people to do it just for social pressure isn't the right way to do it, because I think we still need those companies to do what the companies are supposed to do. Anyway, that's behind you.
Hi, I'm Erica. Thank you for being here as well. I really appreciate your comment last night at dinner about getting more women on boards and the work that you're doing. And at Tuck, we talk a lot about how to reach the C-suite, but we don't talk about joining boards or going through that process. So as we leave Tuck and are starting our careers again, what do you think we should do to kind of line ourselves up to get on a board position?
The question was, what should you do as you leave Tuck to get yourself on a, to begin to prepare for being on a board? And that, for me, the answer is very simple. The people that get on boards are women who are in the C-suite, because the board is dealing with the issues of the CEO. So you have to understand the issues of the CEO, and you have to have some skill sets that are going to be valuable. So the only thing you can do is decide you want to stay in corporate America, which you may or may not decide to do. So you certainly don't want to do it just to get on a board. And then just do the very best job you can. And what I say to people, because I have women a lot older than you ask me this question, is that, first of all, there are very few spots for men or women. And second, that if you're terrific, you're highly likely to have been found by somebody. So just put your head down and do a good job. Any other questions?
So I'm Steve.
Hi, Steve.
If Hillary Clinton makes it back to the White House, would she be a good CEO of the women's movement? And if so, what advice would you give her?
Well, I would love her, with all her experience in politics, to stick with what she's doing, and let's take somebody who's really got corporate experience to be the CEO of the women's movement, and then they could work well together. But what advice would I give them? This is the interesting thing. I didn't say why I'm not in the C-suite, but I'm not in the C-suite. I don't know what all those women know. I just recognize them for their fabulousness, and I have this idea. But I don't know what they should do. I want them to get together and figure it out. I mean, if you can sell soap powder or gasoline or make rockets or do whatever, you got to be able to figure this out. And I just have a couple little clever ideas, but I don't know I don't have the answer for the whole package. I just know all the women that I think could do it. And one question you all might want to ask me is, have I really talked to anybody about this? And what did that person say? Excellent question. Yes, I have. I sent her, my favorite candidate, I sent her this.
What did she say?
She was really excited, and I'm really excited about it. The other neat thing is that those women don't, it's not, one thing about Trewstar is it didn't need a lot of money. And women at this, a lot of these funding things and dealing with the VCs and doing capital raises and all that, really, if you can avoid that, you're really lucky. Well, we don't need lots of money. We don't need lots of money to support people because they've got it already. So I am going to, I might not do it today, but on Monday, I'm going to get back in touch with her, and I'm going to see whether we really can get this going. And this is a thought that another woman has had for a couple of years, and she sort of got sidetracked. But I really think it just is way too frustrating for me to keep hearing the same old all the time with no progress. So thanks for asking that question, Penelope. Yeah. Maybe you can be someone intern.
What's your suggestion for the issue that would be the focus of the women's movement?
It's a very good question. I think part of it is the interwovenness, and there's some things that are really controversial that I haven't mentioned on purpose that have to do with the way women are treated and viewed, and some of it has to do with movies and the video games and all of that, And a lot has to do with violence against men and women. And I think that I would probably, while I want to focus on equality of pay, which seems like such a gimme, you know, like why can't you just get that done? These issues about, you know, media and violence would be something that I would start to focus on very, very early on.
I was just going to, I'm Pam Jensen, thank you for coming. What role do you think that the business schools or the institutions can play in aggregating that population of women?
You know, I don't know whether you were at the thing last night, but I want to repeat what I said last night. There isn't a problem with aggregating the women. The women are all there. They go to all these conferences. It's not hard to find them. The action. Well, that's why I think there needs to be a real leader, and there needs to be some really clever advertising, and you know, to get people to mobilize around it. And we have to get the people that do the conferences to talk about something other than what they talk about. But so much of this isn't really, you know, this is sort of like a little bit of the pipeline issue. How do you get more women in senior positions and more women on boards? And I think it has so much to do with men. And I think that there are lots of men that are perfectly well-intended who are just unaware of. You know, where they'll, like really terrific men will say, men and women in senior positions are the same. And you think, wow, what an enlightened guy, until you realize, wait a second, we're not exactly the same. It was a lot harder. Not that the guy isn't great, but we are different, and it was harder. So I think executive ed programs, the business schools all across the United States, in their executive ed programs where they make a ton of money, need to do women issue cases. I mean, the Harvard Business School has had this big push, more cases about women, and then they teach it to classrooms full of women. Teach it to the classrooms full of men. That's what I think, that's the special thing. Business schools have a captive audience of men, and they need to help press this point with them. And that means, I don't know, there was somebody here I was talking to who's in charge of annual giving. I think that sometimes maybe some of the administration in these business schools worries that it's going to impact contributions. And so they really have to be leaders, you know, and all of you business schools have, I don't want to be presumptuous, but you have a lot of money, and we all have great classrooms, we have great this and great that. Take a risk and actually step out there and talk about this and talk about it with men, and don't worry if somebody doesn't want to give you, you know, his annual contribution.
Yeah, I had a question sort of related to that. So I think a lot of us are really aware or maybe fearful of alienating men in this conversation and making us feel like we're against them. So do you have any suggestions or advice on
Yes,
that?
and the question is, should we be worried about alienating men? And I worry about that all the time. There's a lot of things I could say about boards that I don't say, going back to sort of this in a corporate environment, but I am trying to run this company where men are my clients. And what I say is every day, every week, I meet all these amazing women. And I only meet amazing men, because the not amazing ones don't want to meet with me. But I need to get to those amazing men. And if I don't, you know, if I started going on about a variety of things, which I'm not going to go on about right now, I worry about alienating them. So what I think we should do is focus on the second question, which I think we should pay more attention to the men by acknowledging that we're completely changing their lives. You know, so we're not really changing the life of a 65-year-old man much, but he's aware that he's got younger men behind him, and I think we're just trampling over them. And it's not good for us, and it probably doesn't make them feel very good, and then it becomes too much us versus them. So that's what I think we should do, is really acknowledge what equality for women means for men. All the way in the back.
So I'm a total optimist, and I hear all this stuff, and I look at the women in this room, I get kind of frustrated because I'm a woman in a leadership position at Tuck, and to me, my job as a woman in my 40s who has a great job is to show these women that there is hope, there's opportunity, and they can go out and kick ass because they're all equipped to do it. So I guess my challenge or question to you is, how do we start talking about those kind of things and getting more women like me to show these women that this is possible, that they can go for it? And hey, getting to the C-suite is certainly great, but there's a lot of really great jobs out there that are not necessarily the C-suite, and you can be a great mom or not, you can be a great wife, you can be a great person and get to run and do these things and just, like, I want to stop hearing all this crap because, like, there's so many positive, awesome women here. So, like, when do we get to be positive?
Well, yeah, somebody who, a good friend of mine who read this said to me, you have to be more optimistic. And you know, you don't want to be so, and I thought to myself, with all due respect, I think we're optimistic all the time. And everybody's constantly telling all of you, you can do everything, you can have it all, you can do it when you want. And all I wanted to do today was try to not say all that same old stuff. And all I wanted to do today was say that if you don't acknowledge the fact, in all of this you can have it all and you can have it at different times, and nobody really talks about how hard it is to actually be pregnant or think about being pregnant and have that be part of the mix. And so what I object to is the notion that we don't try to deal with that issue, that we don't have men understand it. It's not that we can't be positive. All of you are going to go off and do something that's great, and you're all forewarned. And I was going to say at the start, this isn't a graduation speech. It's not, you know, somebody when you graduate is going to give you that talk about how you're all fabulous and you can do whatever you want. I wanted to try to say something different, and frankly, I wanted to say, I really want to form this entity that focuses on what makes it slightly harder for a woman to be so terrific so that it becomes less of a challenge.
I hear that, and I guess all I would say is when it is challenging, I'm one of those people who finds it inspiring to hear someone saying, yes, you can do it, even if you think you can't. So that's, but I totally understand. Listen, I was pregnant when I was working and I had to nurse and I had no sleeping, and I totally get it. It's right, we don't talk about it. And I don't pretend to think that you can have it, like having it all, what does that mean? What I think is having it all is different than what you think, so we shouldn't be talking about that. But I think it's so important that we inspire the future women, and I know you're trying to do that and you are doing that, but I just think it's an important voice.
Yeah. Well, how about if I say this on the side of being positive? So I have these 5 absolutely fantastic children, and I always sort of thought they were going to be fantastic, but now they're old enough I can see that they are. And you know, and when I went through it, I didn't really know that it was going to turn out that way. And it's so worth it. And I'm so thrilled that I am where I am with them. And it's not that it's not a challenge being married to my husband, you know, because ladies will find that out. And some of you I know are married, and the 2 of you there that I had dinner with last night, amazing what you're doing, really. That they've been married while they're at Tuck, and they're going to get careers together in the same city, and you know, it's really hard, and they're trying to do it. So it's not. So I'm just saying that I'm thrilled. One last story before we close, which is it's almost 10. It is 10 o'clock. When I was it was the late 70s or early 80s. I can't remember exactly when. I went to some event. It was either a Wellesley College or Harvard Business School event in New York City where there was a woman talking to a group of women. And she was a successful executive. And literally, she started to cry in the middle of the talk because she said to us, I didn't spend enough time with my children, and I so regret it. And I can assure you, I am not standing up here starting to cry because I spent plenty of time with them. And I'm thrilled that I did that and that I've still managed to come along and, you know, do something that I enjoy. And I'm sure all of the rest of you will figure out whatever that means for you. So thank you very much. You're so welcome. Oops, sorry.
Lumps have to say. Thank you.